Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Wednesdays with Larijuana. Every Wednesday, right here on CannabisBuy.com, we bring you the latest information for recreational and medical marijuana from all over the world. Now, cannabis has been around for thousands of years, but marijuana, not so much. So today we're going to talk about the origins of the word marijuana. And this is from leafly.com, and it's from a recent post by them. The word marijuana plays a controversial role in the cannabis culture. Many well-known organizations, such as Oakland's Harborside Health Center, have publicly denounced the M word in favor of our favorite plant's Latin name, cannabis. Even Salon Magazine, a major press outlet outside the cannabis industry, published an article titled, "Is the Word Marijuana Racist?" last year. As a mainstream culture becomes a little more herb-friendly, the terminology used by the industry is coming to center stage. But why exactly does the term marijuana cause so much debate? Even worse, why has the word gained publicity as a racist term? To save you from reading those lengthy history books or some boring academic articles, we've created a brief timeline to give you the lowdown on marijuana's rise to popularity in the United States. Here's what you need to know. The Mexican Revolution, 1840 to 1900, prior to 1910, marijuana didn't exist as a word in American culture. Rather, cannabis was used most often to reference the medicines and the remedies for common household ailments. In the early 1900s, what have now become pharmaceutical giants Bristol-Myers Squibb and Eli Lilly used to include cannabis and cannabis extracts in their medicines. During this time, Americans, particularly elite Americans, were going through a hashish trend, glamorized by literary celebrities such as Alexander Dumas. Experimenting with cannabis products became a fad among those wealthy enough to afford imported goods. Between the years of 1910 and 1920, over 890,000 Mexicans legally immigrated into the United States seeking refuge from the wreckage of the Civil War. Though cannabis had been part of the U.S. history since the country's beginnings, the idea of smoking the plant recreationally was not as common as other forms of consumption. The idea of smoking cannabis entered mainstream American consciousness after the arrival of immigrants who brought the smoking habit with them. 1913, the first bill criminalizing the cultivation of loco weed was passed in California. The bill was a major push from the Board of Pharmacy as a way to regulate opiates and psychoactive pharmaceuticals, and seemingly did not stem from the reefer madness or racialized understandings of marijuana that paved the way to full-on prohibition in the 1930s. The Great Depression had just hit the United States, and Americans were searching for someone to blame. Due to the influx of immigrants, particularly in the South, and the rise of suggestive jazz music, many white Americans began to treat cannabis, and arguably the blacks and Mexican immigrants who consumed it, as foreign substance used to corrupt the minds and bodies of low-class individuals. In the time just before the federal criminalization of the plant, 29 states independently banned the herb that became known as marijuana. Harry Anslinger. It would not be an overstatement to say that Harry Anslinger was one of the primary individuals responsible for creating the stigma surrounding cannabis. Hired as the first director of the recently created Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930, Anslinger launched a vigilant campaign against cannabis that would hold steady for the 3 decades he remained in office. A very outspoken man, Anslinger used the recent development of the movie theater to spread messages that racialized the plant for white audiences. In one documented incident, Anslinger testified before Congress explaining, and this is a quote, "Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. Most marijuana smokers are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage." In another statement, Anslinger articulated, reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men. The primary reason to outlaw marijuana, its effect on the degenerate races. In retrospect, Anslinger's efforts with the Bureau of Narcotics were the reason marijuana became a word known by Americans all over the country. When making public appearances and crafting propaganda films such as Reefer Madness, Anslinger specifically used the term marijuana when campaigning against the plant, adding to the development of the herb's new foreign identity. Cannabis was no longer the plant substance found in medicines and consumed unanimously by Americans all over the country. 1937, the Marijuana Act of 1937 was the culmination of Anslinger's work and the first step to all-out prohibition. The bill federally criminalized the cannabis plant in every U.S. state. In order to discourage the production of cannabis use, the Tax Act of 1937 placed a $1 tax on anyone who sold or cultivated the cannabis plant. On top of the tax itself, the bill mandated that all individuals comply with certain enforcement provisions. Violation of the provisions would result in imprisonment and/or a fine up to $2,000. Though the word marijuana is the most common name for cannabis in the United States today, its history is deeply steeped in race, politics, and a complicated cultural revolution. Some argue that using the word ignores a history of oppression against Mexican immigrants and African Americans, while others insist that the term has now lost its prejudice bite. Regardless of whether or not you decide to use the word yourself, it's impossible to deny the magnitude and racial implications of its introduction into the American lexicon. So that's the history of the word marijuana. The history of cannabis, well, we'll see how that goes. Peace and love, everybody.